Hello, and welcome to The Greater Loop, a podcast of the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston. My name is Maryanne Maldonado, and today we're going to be talking about some amazing places that we're going to be going later in the year. Most people in the world travel to see the world, but the World Affairs Council travels to understand the world. And because there's a difference between standing in front of a landmark and actually knowing why it matters, who built it, who constructed it, and what it means for the country at large. So today we're going to be talking about two amazing countries that are perfectly aligned with the current global movement. Uzbekistan, who is right in the middle of a new great power competition between Russia, China, and the West, and South Korea and Taiwan, two democracies sitting at the hottest flashpoint in the earth right now. So today we're joined by our travel expert, Ilyas Hokkaci. And Ilyas, let's get right into it.
Hello, Maryanne. Yes, it's very exciting to continue our podcast series with these two different destinations. And I'm sure we will cover the interesting and important aspects of these locations, these places, and give some information, some insight to our membership and council followers.
So let's jump right in. So first of all, let's talk about Uzbekistan. Where in the world is Uzbekistan, and why is it important for us to know about it?
Well, Uzbekistan is in the middle of Asia, the continent, Central Asia. Central Asia, well, it is an area that I really like to visit, and I have done that quite a number of times. And all these countries, Stan countries, they are sometimes called as, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan. They are all very interesting. But Uzbekistan is the gem among them, where the history, the Silk Road, the cultures of the past and present are visible. They converge over there and culminated in the past. The pinnacle of Islamic civilization and Central Asian civilization throughout centuries. So location is important, and visiting the country is very important, as we'll see shortly.
Absolutely. So Uzbekistan sits right between Russia, China, Central Asia, a region every major power is quietly competing and wanting to take over. How does the World Affairs Council make that global perspective triangle for travelers once they arrive?
Well, it is a matter of coming from past to present and making the connections. Once we land in Tashkent, the capital of Uzbekistan, we are in a modern capital with the legacy of Soviet Union still visible, after a few decades, still in the city planning, in the buildings that are from Soviet period. It is interesting to see that part of the country. But then when we fly to Khiva, we are in a totally different world. That is, we see the Silk Road settlement, Silk Road city in a compact form, as it has been, a few centuries before. And to make that jump and to connect it to the today's geopolitical realities, that is the trick, and that is the important part. We always talk about Silk Road. We always talk about Silk Road as a thing of the past that China, for example, is now trying to so-called revive with the new Silk Road and various initiatives. We need to remind ourselves and go over the fact that Silk Road in the past was not just a trade route, but it was an information highway. It was the route that not only the goods, but belief systems, thought systems, and cultures and armies went through and came together. And the conflicts and peaceful times among those resulted in big changes. And we need to see and remind ourselves again that at a certain point in medieval times, Central Asia and Uzbekistan in particular was the center of Islamic civilization and an important center that not only trade, but sciences and math and astronomy, all those things came together, and we can see that visibly once we are there.
So, Ilyas, walk us through the highlights. You mentioned Tashkent, Khiva, Bukhara, Registan, excuse me. Walk us through the highlights. What will we see when we're there?
Yes, as I mentioned a short while ago, we fly into Tashkent, and that is the vibrant capital of Uzbekistan. And we still see a number of renovated, structures, mosques and madrasas from a couple of centuries ago. But basically, it is the central government, and the Soviet legacy, as I mentioned, is quite visible. But that is not the only thing. Of course, the modernity continues, and that modern face of the country is quite visible in the capital. And then Khiva. Khiva is a compact town from the Silk Road times, and with the mud brick walls and blue tiled domes and the madrasas, mosques, and palaces. It is a totally different world. And from there to Bukhara and Samarkand. Bukhara, at some point in 10th, 11th, 12th centuries, that was a scholarly center of Islamic civilization. And we need to, again, understand that the madrasas, for example, most of the American public became aware of madrasas with certain unfortunate connotations and unfortunate events. Madrasas simply were universities all the time. They were not just, schools of religion for Islam, but they were learning centers for math, for astronomy, for sciences, for medicine of the times. So when we go to Bukhara and Samarkand later, we see all those structures, all those madrasas and mosques still as living places, not simply things of the past. So the architecture is really important, and we understand the importance of architecture as a means to convey power, a means to convey the cultural culmination of the period. So those are all interesting aspects of those sites, those cities that we're going to visit.
Well, it sounds exciting. So, for someone who's never thought about Central Asia or traveling, but wants to get the most out of traveling to this region, why is Uzbekistan the trip to book?
Yes, it is important to give meaning to the geopolitical conflicts that you mentioned in the region. So once we go there, those are not simply, TV news narratives or in the pages of books of history, but they are there in front of us. And what a World Affairs Council trip brings together is the understanding, the story, the narrative that we bring together that draws the line from its important past to its importance today. So, to understand the current face of Islamic culture on the one hand, and the geopolitical developments of the region as they are ongoing today, it is a must to go and visit this destination.
Well, it sounds fascinating. So, I know that people will want to take advantage of it. You can go to our website at wachhouston.org. And let's shift gears a little bit. We're also going to be taking a trip to South Korea and Taiwan. So, it's a region that's heavily in the news. You're taking a group this October to both places. What does standing there in the middle of that region actually do to the way you read the current news?
Yes, that is quite a jump from Central Asia to the all the way to the east, and to a different geopolitical fault line. Two of them actually, with South Korea, of course, always in the news with North and South, and the war that never actually ended after the Korean War. So there's armistice, but it is, there was never a treaty, at the end of the war. So it is an ongoing situation. With Taiwan, well, it is a small island with about, 23, 24 million people, if I'm not wrong. And people may think, just 1.5 billion mainland China. And what is the big deal of this small island of small population? And once we go there, we see that it is not so. And in the current news, both countries are in the news almost daily, especially nowadays. Once we go there, once we land to Seoul in South Korea or Taipei in Taiwan, we see that it is real, it is there, we feel it, we breathe it, and we understand as we travel into these countries, both of them.
And one of the things that World Affairs Council does is really delve into the geopolitical content that's rich in this region. And so one of our site visits will be a trip out to the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, a 2.5 mile stretch between North and South Korea, and one of the most heavily fortified borders on the earth. What can we expect when we go there? Because not every tourist gets to go to this region.
Well, yes, you are right, Marianne. It is a really surreal visit. There are different parts of this DMZ that we can visit, and we always try to arrange the most interesting part of it. Everybody knows, must have seen, I believe, who are interested in news, the blue barracks, extending from South Korea to North Korean side, and the famous concrete borderline that divides those blue barracks, and where President Trump a few years ago just jumped over into North Korea and shook hands with the leader of North Korea at the time. Now this is really surreal, I would say, and I have been to both sides of the border. I have seen from north to south and south to north. It is a place really that you feel the tension. You feel that you shouldn't do anything wrong, no unnecessary movement or look, or taking a wrong step may really cause a global incident over there. So it is surreal in that sense, but it also makes things real. It is not just on the screen. It's not just, diplomats going back and forth or trying to come together to come to a solution or at least a standstill over there. It is real, and South Koreans feel that. That is another aspect of that DMZ, the existence of DMZ, which is, well, think of South Korea. They are a developed democracy, a developed economy, and they are going on with their daily lives, not every moment engaged with the reality of that demilitarized zone over there, just half an hour from their capital. But it is in the back of their minds. Once we speak with the South Koreans, once we visit their institutions, we understand that it is in the back of their minds daily. And that surreal situation and location, it is hopefully a part of our visit, and we will also experience that in place. We will also visit, actually, just having said that, we will have a meeting with a news agency that is specialized in North Korean news. They are specialists in following the TV news bulletins and publications from North Korea. And just we will have an opportunity to visit with them and to ask them questions and listen from them about the reality of North Korea at the same time.
Sounds exciting. And 14 days, two countries will go from ancient palaces to semiconductor companies to the DMZ. What would you want someone to know and book before all these spots fill up?
Yes, it is. What we need to understand is, so these two countries are on the geopolitical fault lines, very similar to each other. And it is important for us to understand and to see on the spot how people feel and how this reality is reflected in their daily lives, in their economy, in their response to any possible threat that might put their existence in danger. So, this trip brings together these two countries and makes it possible for us to see and understand both at the same time, and that part of the world which is now almost constantly in the news.
Absolutely. Well, for anybody who wants to learn more about our full itinerary, you can go to our website at wachhouston.org. And it also will show all the 2027 trips. We'll be going to Japan, Mongolia, the Baltics, whole bunch of cool places with our geopolitical twist. So make sure you check us out and look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.